terrible rainy morning. There's Rocky. He's been sleeping up there in the window. How much is that Rocky in the window? Hey, how you doing? Meow, meow. Hey, what a cat. It's not going to allow me to do that for some reason. I don't know why. Well, we'll just focus on Rocky then. Yes. Anyway, I'm going to tell you kind of a comical story from when I was a little boy. This story took place when I was 5 or 6 years old, so this would be back around 1973 or 74. And it was at our landlord's house. Our landlord and landlady, they were Jerry and Marg. They were a couple, Jerry and Marg. Gerald and Margaret, Jerry and Marg. Anyway, they had animals. They had cats and dogs and whatnot. Marg especially really loved animals. And they had this one old black lab dog there by the name of Blackie. And Blackie actually was a friend of mine. I used to run around with Blackie in the horse pasture out behind their house quite often and stuff. And I used to often play with Blackie. Anyway, Blackie, though, was old and he had a bunch of problems, including anal parasites. So Blackie was constantly turning around, licking his arse. I suppose it gave him a little relief or whatever, but his arse was always red and raw and nasty looking. And you could tell it was sore. And anyway, this factors into the story. I'm not telling you this just to gross you out. It actually factors into the story. Also, you should know Jerry was very quick-witted. And Jerry and Marg, they weren't a very happy couple. They didn't get along very well. They were one of those couples that stayed married because that's what you did in those days. That's what it was. Anyway, we went over to Jerry and Marg's house, my dad and I did, because my dad had some business to talk over with Jerry, our landlord. He brought me with him. Like I say, I was 5 or 6 years old. I remember it really well. We went over there, and they'd just finished supper. Well, we had just finished supper too, but they had just finished supper. And so Marg was taking all the plates from the table, from her and Jerry and their 2 daughters, and she was scraping them onto one plate, which she put down on the floor for Blackie, so Blackie could eat the table scraps. Well, Blackie, my dad and Jerry were sitting at the table then having a beer and talking about over their business, and Blackie, he took a mouthful of the table scraps, and then he turned around and he started licking his arse, his nasty, raw, parasite-infected arse. And Marg started scolding him. She says, Here now, Blackie. Stop that, you dirty old thing. And quick as a wit, with Jerry, very quick-witted, Jerry pipes up and he says, Oh, leave him alone, Marg. He's only trying to get the bad taste out of his mouth. So there you go. He was licking his arse to get the bad taste of her cooking out of his mouth. Leave him alone, Marg. He's only trying to get the bad taste out of his mouth. Anyway, that was our landlord, Jerry. Anyway, he very quick-witted. Yeah, we lived in a trailer park, which was next door to their house. The first time I saw where the trailer park is, it was a horse pasture. They actually had race horses grazing in it. The race horses actually went blind. Some disease went through and blinded them all. And Marg kept them, though, until they died. She kept them until they got old and died. And they still had a huge pasture area behind their house with a barn and everything. And so, anyway, they put the trailer park in and where the pasture at the side of the house was. And I remember standing there in their yard with my dad and Jerry and looking over the fence and seeing the horses grazing in the field where the trailer park was going to go. Because we were the first people in the trailer park. We were the first family to rent a space in the trailer park. In fact, when we first got there, we had no running water and no electricity enough that you could run a stove or whatever. We had an extension cord that went across the yard over to Jerry and Marg's house. And we plugged into their house so that we would have working lights, basically, so that we could turn our lights on and off. Anyway, until the services got established. But anyway, yeah, that's just a story anyway about when I was a kid and something that happened. Another thing that happened, though, is they had to do a survey. And when they put the trailer park in, they had to have a survey done. And the survey showed that their neighbor on the opposite side of their house, a man by the name of Dick Cooch, that was actually his name. His name was Dick Cooch, believe it or not. And Dick Cooch, Dick Cooch, he had a taxi cab business. He did Cooch's Taxi. Anyway, Dick Cooch, it turns out Dick Cooch's kitchen, the survey uncovered that Dick Cooch's kitchen was built a foot across the property line. So Dick Cooch's kitchen was actually a foot over the property line onto our landlord and landlady's property. Well, our landlady had grown up really poor, and I think that maybe was part of the reason she was the way she was. But she loved money, and I think maybe not having any when she was young or whatever had affected her, and she just had an appetite for money. Anyway, and she saw an opportunity there because they had the power to force Dick Cooch to tear down his kitchen. Because his kitchen was encroaching on their property. Jerry, on the other hand, was more reasonable about it. Jerry didn't want to make a bad neighbor, and get into a feud with the neighbor and all that and have all kinds of bad feelings there. And Jerry hadn't been bit by the greed bug the way Marg had been. And so Jerry, this is back in the days too, when the man was the boss and the man could just do things, whether the woman liked it or not, Back then it was still like that very much. Jerry went over to see Dick Cooch, and Jerry said, well, in order to be legal, money has to change hands. So he said, give me $1. Just pay me $1. And, you can buy the strip of land from me, just pay me $1. So Dick gave Jerry $1 and he bought the land. And that was it. Anyway, and after that, though, when Marg found out what Jerry had done, went around behind her back and sold the land to Dick Cooch for $1, Marg was hopping mad, and she didn't speak to Jerry for a year. Jerry always said that was the best year of their marriage anyway, so there was that. But, yeah, there you go. Anyway, those are just a few stories from when I was a kid. And a good morning to you, and we'll talk to you later.